this drop basically that how the outer world and the Netherlands in particular. I saw a report was published yesterday, I think in the Nederland, the NRC Dagblad, that talking about St. Martin government falling within such a short period of
17
time,
days, yeah.
17 days, and you're hearing from the opposition, well, former opposition benches, basically you in 17 days, for the past 17 days, this government has done nothing. What can you actually accomplish in 17 days?
I mean,
and that is a question that was put
More than
also
they can
yesterday
in 4
on the
years.
open forum here in the Breakfast Lounge yesterday. You believe the government wasn't given a fair chance, in your opinion?
At all? Not at all. I mean, as we said, Grace, it's a matter of screening process that was extended due to the informateurs process, to identify like compatibilities, and then you had the actual screening process, information process, and then, as I said, the goalposts tend to keep moving, which just made it that much more stressful and difficult. And then we swear in, and then, like I mentioned, in last week, you had, for the first time ever, according to me, and I think Minister Gums can correct me if I'm wrong, the first time ever, an onboarding process to introduce ministers and their cabinets to the processes of government, something I think actually should have been done from since 10-10-10, and so in an onboarding, which is an assessment, you're deep diving into your respective ministries, you're figuring out what is going on. And when you read the comments, for example, from the Minister of Finance on the real state of affairs, you realize that, as we've said before here in this Breakfast Lounge, you got a lot of mold that's been painted over, but the mold is still there.
Yeah.
And that's really where we're at still, and I think you cannot hope to accomplish anything in 70 days. And the comment was made too on the floor of Parliament about GEBE. And I absolutely cannot wait for the acting minister of VROMI to put out her statements finally on the real state of affairs in VROMI, especially when it relates to GEBE. And we've been 2 years on now, and nothing was done to solve that particular problem. But in 17 days, while onboarding, you expect it to be resolved. So I think again, people, if I listen to the call-ins on your show, the last 2 times you've had it, it's people are upset because I recognize those voices. Those voices are not PFP supporters. And that's why I say, self-reflection maybe is necessary for those parties.
Right. Yep. Now I'm going to turn the mic over to Mr. Peterson as a Chief of Staff for Ministry for VROMI. Acting Minister Janssen Webster. We see it on the front page of the paper today. Also was in the paper yesterday that as Acting Minister Janssen Webster in the CALM press briefing on Tuesday said that VROMI has been operating without leadership, pointing to numerous vacancies not being filled, lack of department heads, no SG, etc. Now, if that is indeed the case, how has the ministry been able to function effectively for all this time?
The short answer is, Grace, it hasn't. It hasn't been functioning. And what the minister said, that is exactly what's going on. When we reached into the ministry, no SG is in place. We were missing department heads. A department head of a domain was not in place. We don't have a policy department head. We don't have a permits department head, just an acting head. So it's pretty bad. And then when you look at the SG's staff bureau, they don't have a legal advisor. Only the secretary is there. They don't have a financial controller as yet. So the body of VROMI is not there. So then I asked myself, what is really going on? Because if the body is not there, but you're still, making executive decisions, what type of decisions are you making? And that's when I went into what was the result of, for example, the last year. And I can tell you, Grace, all of the backlash that the former government has received when it comes to the backlog in permits, the backlog in domain, failure to adhere to the DRAM verdict, basically making it so that no issuance of land is available, is possible, actually. I did a quick search within the last 2 weeks that we were there, and I found some disturbing things, disturbing to say the least. When you look at what has been prioritized by the former government, it is not the people. It is foreign developers who are investing millions into high rises alone, and then you get a same opposition now coalition asking us, what is the deal with GB? Well, if you guys paid any attention to GB within these last 2 years, or even asked GB their opinion on all of these high rises and big developments that were coming in, we would have not had the problem that we have today, where we cannot handle our grid. And if I show you now, Grace, because I have some paperwork with me, and I can show you.
Please share it with the radio listeners.
Um,
Other viewers also on your
yes,
Facebook.
for sure. I have
Live.
papers here of a couple of permits, 4 of them, and I am just going to read the estimated building costs for these permits. And none of these developments have started. These are just pending building permits to start to get executed. You have one here for 3.5 million guilders. That is the estimated building cost. You have another one here for 3.6 million guilders, another estimated building cost. You have one here for 11,600,000 guilders. And then the nicest one, this one is 28 million guilders. These are developments that nobody knows about, that GP doesn't know about, that still have to start, and then would have to also add themselves to our grid. How are we going to do this? So if we're talking about sustainable development, as per the last the previous minister of Romy, that this goes exactly against all of that. So that is just a whiff of what we are finding in Romy. That is just basically the permits department. Don't even get me started on domain affairs, because then we're going to be here for 2 hours.
Well, give me 5 minutes.
You open Pandora's box.
Give me a few minutes on that.
All right. Well, then, when we look at domain affairs, first of all, the lack of the hearing through the DDUM verdict basically says that if you do not develop a policy, which was the DDUM verdict, I think dates back to 2021 or 2022, the latest. It says that if you do not develop this policy that creates transparency for the people, then every issuance of land that you do as a minister might be deemed unlawful, and that means that the notaries also will not give you a deed, or actually work to get your deed passed. And that is what's happening right now. We have so many people who receive decrees that expire in 6 months, of course, because that's the expiry date of the decree, but are stuck because they cannot get to the notary, because the notary is telling them, well, the minister did not bring a policy, but he gave you a besluit. I don't understand why, but I still cannot pass your deed. That is why the previous minister, I think this year, while he was in a demissionary state, decided that he is going to make a ministerial beschiking, in which he decides that every single decree given by Vromi in the past up to June this year would still be valid. Why? Because he thought that once we got in, we were going to do the hard work that he had to do for the last 2-3 years, which is basically create said policy for the people, for domain, for transparency, execute that, and then you can start giving off land. He said, you know what, I'm going to skip that step. I'm going to just make sure that everybody that I give a besluit to within these last couple of months have a little extra space. Meanwhile, let's hope that Ray does the work and establishes the policy on time, so that all of these people can still go and get their deeds passed.
For all of life's twists, turns, and defining moments, RBC is a blend for all of you. SZV, your social and health insurance is SZV, your social and health insurance is.
Are you SZV insured? Do you have a valid medical insurance status? SZV is cardless. Request your My SZV account today and enter the virtual office of SZV. Go to szv.sx and sign up now.
SZV, yeah, your social and health insurance is.
if the opposition or the new coalition
Mhm.
seeks to push back the election date,
Uh-huh.
by what means would they? Do you think that's possible?
Mhm.
And what avenues could they try to in order to do that?
They will, like they have been doing for the past week, 2 weeks, they will try anything in and out of the books, for sure. But they cannot. They cannot. That Article 59, sometimes to my own chagrin, is of the government that is there. And that is Marcelino and his ministers. That's of them. And there's no way they can come here in Parliament, get a presidency of Parliament, take a motion, no election. It does not. It's a right of the government. And again, I have had my issues. I still do, because that article is being, again, just let me quickly give a briefing to it. It has been taken over from the Netherlands Antilles, where they had the person, the governor, to be the one to say, no, you guys have an impasse going on there, election. We, in the whole democratizing process, we have put it with the government, which is the calm that they can dissolve the parliament. And unless it is something really, really wrong with that, even His Excellency, the governor, does not have a choice. Because of Article 59 of the Constitution, the parliament can be dissolved by national decree. And once that decision is taken, within 3 months of that decision, a new parliament must sit.
And how will these events impact the swearing in of the two missing ministers? Would those still continue, even though?
That is a very good question at this point. Now that basically you have, again, we don't know formally of that term in terms of the missionary government, but I guess that's a standstill right now. I guess that is at a standstill right now.
So you believe they wouldn't bother to appoint the two missing ministers?
I don't see the matter pertaining to the two additional ministers being solved in time to say it makes sense to put them in.
Okay, clear.
Can I ask one more question?
Sure.
Mr. Mengret, during the press conference last night, he made it clear that he had been talking to Mr. Christopher Emmanuel about had discussions for a long time, and he quoted Christopher Emmanuel supposedly saying that having Luc Marcelline as the prime minister is the worst decision ever. So he said that Christopher Emmanuel is very critical of the current government, of which he is part of the coalition. How does that reflect all these statements? How do these reflect on your current your partner, Emmanuel?
You know, I would love, and I would encourage you and MP Emmanuel to give his take on this situation. I would love, I could, but I'm not going to speak for him, because honestly, truly, if you members of the media were to be made aware of the sinister nature of what has been going on behind the scenes before that the NA up and Mengret came to the decision that it came, it is unimaginable. But again, I hope, I'll encourage him that he does, that MP Emmanuel gave you his take on your question with respect to the observations by Mengret. Honestly, I'm going to say, please let the people know. Let the people know. I don't need to go. I know differently. I know the truth. But you let him tell his story. Let him tell his story. I know MP Emmanuel was on a radio program as well this morning, and I don't know if he went into that, but if he did not, I really would like him to do so.
SXV insured? Do you have a valid medical insurance status? SXV is cardless. Request your My SXV account today and enter the virtual office of SXV. Go to sxv.sx and sign up now.
SXV, yeah. Your social health insurances. For all of life's twists, turns, and defining moments, RBC is open for all of you.
In your quick scan. So let me think how to formulate this. So perhaps a broader question. It seems clear the Prime Minister's mentioned that you've sent a decree to the governor to dissolve Parliament. Parliament as yet has not voted to dismiss the Council of Ministers. Therefore, you are not a demissionaire government yet. It may be within a few hours, but as of this moment, you're not a demissionaire government. Therefore, the government can still make decisions, let's say, charting a new course. Once you become a demissionaire government, it's sort of standard business, just keeping the country running. So in your quick scan, you've mentioned a number of items about projects going forward without a proper tender process being done. So my broader question would be, will the Council of Ministers make a decision to bust the pot? Everybody in the past, they've sort of threatened to bust the pot, make everything open. For example, VROMI, why not call for an independent financial and operational audit of GB? Everybody is up to here with GB. Make a decision as Council of Ministers to call for an independent audit, financial and operational, of GB. For TIAT, you've highlighted a number of points which seem to be of concern. These seem to be concerns. Would you then submit them to the Integrity Chamber, for example? Make a decision will you, as Council of Ministers, as Minister of TIAT, make a decision to investigate these and act on those investigations prior to your term leaving office?
Thank you, Mr. Lee, for your question. Indeed, yes, I stated in my closing statement that the quick scan will continue. The issue I have right now is that I too have to cut my budget by $1 million guilders for this budget. So we would have to really see financially how we go about doing the quick scan and which company we use to do this quick scan. But of course, indeed, I said it will continue, and if I have to be open to the public and transparent to the public, I will come back and give a deep dive, a broader information of what it entails. And if it has to seek legal action, then so let it be. But the people need to know why this is happening, and it's a lot going on internally. I don't want to use this forum to go into that information right now, but indeed, it is important, it is imperative that the people find out exactly where we are. Yes.
Judy Fitzpatrick of the Daily Herald, you have the floor.
Yes, very good morning, Prime Minister and ministers present. Minister
of the Daily Herald, you have the floor.
Yes, very good morning, Prime Minister and ministers present. Minister Heidegger Martin, you listed quite a number of what you refer to as discrepancies that you've uncovered in your 2 weeks and 4 days in office. My question is, are any of the discrepancies that you discovered, are any of them considered illegal? And how do you plan to address, if any of them were illegal, how do you plan to address them? Will a report perhaps be made to the prosecutor's office to look into these? So I'd like to know how you plan to address these discrepancies that you found and whether any are considered illegal.
Overall,
Thank
most
you.
of them that I find internally are processes that was not followed properly. There are some, maybe one or two potential fraudulent processes. I am still in the early deliberations of that, and based on the outcome, I will make my decision.
Thank you.
Thank you, Minister Heiliger Martin. Are there any further questions for Minister?
Yeah, so perhaps a follow-up.
Yes.
You've mentioned, if I understood correctly, that contract was awarded for the design build of the marketplace.
The contract was awarded for the build. The term of reference was to build, but the same company that designed, which was the only company to design, was the company that was afforded the project. Other companies bid on what was already designed by one company. The exact same company that designed it was the company that won. And that therein lies the discrepancy.
So, as I understand the processes, contracts of that nature, certainly over a certain dollar value, needs to go to the governor's office to be signed off on, in which case part of the process in the governor's office is to make sure that processes were adhered to.
Correct.
Did this go through that process?
What the governor saw was the term of reference and the contract, but I have other paperwork that shows otherwise. So I can see who designed it. The governor is not privy to that. So the governor will not see that information.
Okay.
You understand?
Yep.
Yeah.
Thank
Privy to it, sorry.
Thank you,
Any other
Mr. Lee.
questions?
Judy Fitzpatrick.
So I have a question, and I'll be asking this question to each and every of the ministers that are present here today. I know that sometime in the past, when there was a similar situation where the article was invoked and election had to be called, it was indicated at that time that election would be, because typically it's supposed to be in 3 months, but at that time, I believe it was 2019, it was supposed to have been in 6 months, and the sitting government at that time had to step down, and the new government went in for the 6 months. So my question is, if there is a situation where election would be called in 6 months instead of 3, and you are asked to give up your positions, would you do that? And Minister Heiliger Martin, just one clarification on your answer. What are some of the discrepancies that you found that can be considered fraudulent?
So indeed, I will do the honorable thing and make my position available to answer your question. And secondly, as I mentioned earlier, the request for the bid was to bid on the building. In the beginning, it was to design and build. That part is left out, so the governor is not able to see that part. So the person that designed it is the person that won it, and it's not fair to the others that bid. There is some discrepancies in the way that process was done, and there's a lot of other discrepancies like this that I've seen with other projects within the TIAD ministry.
Thank you, Minister Heiliger.
She has a follow-up question.
May I?
Go ahead.
Yes.
Yes. So I also wanted to ask, do you plan to return to Parliament if you do have to give up your position?
Of course. I made mention of that if I have to, most definitely, not only return to Parliament, but of course to the people of St. Martin to clarify everything, for sure. But my intention is not to stop this project, because I've been an advocate of it from day one to have it to begin. My main point going in was mainly to find an opportunity to make the design, to make changes to the design to suit the marketers, the market vendors' needs. That's all. But in doing that, I found these discrepancies.